All right, today we're jumping into something really important, a critical update on U.S. sanctions that has completely changed the game for financial risk. Now, if you work in finance, shipping, or really any kind of global trade, listen up. This isn't just some minor policy update, it's like a hidden tripwire that's been laid across the entire global financial system.
Let's just start with this quote, because it absolutely nails why this matters. We've moved way past worrying about whether a compliance slip-up might damage a company's image. Now, we are talking about a direct, tangible threat to your bottom line. So what on earth happened?
Well, our story really kicks off on February 23, 2026. That's the day the U.S. Treasury rolled out a major new sanctions package that kind of quietly changed the fundamental rules for global business.
So on that day, the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, you probably know them as OFAC, they're the ones who enforce all of this stuff. They designated a dozen entities and a bunch of individuals. And while the official target was disrupting trade related to Russia, the real story, the one that affects everyone, is the massive ripple effect this created.
You see, the initial targets were really broad. They hit companies in shipping, financial services, and even firms exporting what are called dual-use technologies. Things that can be used for both normal civilian stuff and for military purposes. This just goes to show that the U.S. wasn't just aiming at one industry. They were targeting the entire support system behind these trade flows.
And that brings us to the absolute heart of the matter. The big change here wasn't just the list of new companies that got sanctioned. No. It was the powerful expansion of something called secondary sanctions, which basically rewrote the rulebook for everybody, everywhere.
So what are secondary sanctions, really? Okay, think about it like this. Primary sanctions are like telling your friend, hey, don't talk to Bob. But secondary sanctions? That's like telling your friend, if you talk to anyone who talks to Bob, I'm not talking to you anymore. That's the power here. The US can now punish a company that isn't even American for doing business with a sanctioned entity, even if that whole deal has zero connection to the United States. It's a huge expansion of their financial reach.
And this chart, it just lays out the shift perfectly. In the past, on the left here, compliance was pretty straightforward. Just don't do business directly with anyone on the blacklist. Simple enough. But now, look at the right. The focus is on network disruption. It's not enough to just avoid direct contact anymore. You now have to map out your entire financial and supply chain to make sure you're not even indirectly connected to someone on that list. It's a whole new ballgame.
So, of course, this leads to the million-dollar question. Who's actually at risk from this global ripple effect? If you're watching this, you're probably asking yourself, does this affect my business? Well, let's take a look.
The list of industries caught in the crosshairs is pretty long. We're talking about global banks, the ones that really make international finance work. We're talking about the insurers who underwrite all the risks in global trade, commodity traders, shipping brokers, you name it. All these sectors are now on the absolute front lines of this new risk environment.
And this isn't just a headache for companies in Europe or North America. Not at all. Financial institutions in places like Africa, the Middle East, and Asia are especially vulnerable. And why is that? It's because even if their business is 1,000 miles away, their dependence on the US dollar for transactions yanks them right into the orbit of US enforcement.
Okay, so with this new reality, how are businesses supposed to adapt? Well, it boils down to a clear 3-point shift in risk, which basically creates a brand new compliance playbook.
Let's break these down, because each one is absolutely crucial. First, the risk is just higher. The penalty for a non-US firm isn't just some fine anymore. It's the threat of being completely cut off from the US financial system. For any international business, that is basically a death sentence. Second, your due diligence has to go so much deeper. You can't just check your immediate client and call it a day. Now you have to know who owns the ship they're using, who insures that ship, which banks are touching the money, everything. It's about total supply chain transparency. And third, the consequences just cascade. One mistake in shipping can void your insurance policy, which then triggers a default on your financing. It's a domino effect that can take a company apart in a matter of days.
What all of this is really pointing to is a permanent, fundamental change in the compliance landscape. This isn't just a one-off announcement that you react to and then move on. It's a whole new way of thinking about global business.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This quote from a US Treasury official says it all. The old idea of sanctions being a static list of names you check once in a while, that's over. We are now living in a continuous compliance environment where the risks and the networks are shifting all the time.
So, the big takeaway is clear. The old model of doing a compliance review once a quarter or once a year is completely obsolete. Businesses have to embed this stuff into their daily operations now. It's about moving to real-time risk governance to even have a chance of navigating this incredibly complex world.
And we'll just end with this question to leave you with. In a world where our financial systems and supply chains are more tangled together than ever before, this policy shift really suggests that when it comes to global finance, there might not be any sidelines left to stand on.